गुड न्यूज टुडे, नई उम्मीद जगाने वाला हिंदी न्यूज चैनल।
It's the last stronghold of the resistance in Afghanistan, but is the fall of Panjshir now imminent? The Taliban claims it has taken complete control of the Panjshir Valley. Fighters of the organization unfurled the Talibani flag at the governor's office in Panjshir and posed right under the portrait of the legendary fighter Ahmad Massoud. The resistance front, however, has rejected the Taliban's claim, declaring that the fight for the mountains is still on.
The battle for Panjshir is in its final stages. The last anti-Taliban bastion witnessing its probable endgame. This is the defining image of Taliban's claim of conquering Panjshir. Taliban fighters posing outside the governor's house in this outpost, even hoisting the Islamic Emirate flag at the governor's residence, trying to put a seal of approval on their victory claim. The Taliban also claim to have captured more US-made Black Hawk helicopters, which were used by caretaker President Amrullah Saleh and Northern Alliance leader Ahmad Massoud. The Taliban claim they offered options for talks to the resistance forces, which went unheeded. But resistance forces have denied the Taliban's claims, claiming that their fighters are still holding key positions high up in the Panjshir mountains. Massoud's spokesperson spoke to Turkish TRT World Channel minutes before the Taliban claimed that they had captured Panjshir. He said the resistance is still in an advantageous position. The Taliban claim to have inflicted heavy casualties on resistance forces. Fahim Dashti, the spokesperson of the resistance force and key aide of Ahmad Massoud, has reportedly been killed in the Panjshir battle. The Taliban blamed it on factional fighting in the resistance. In another blow to resistance forces, its chief commander, Saleh Mohammad, was also reportedly killed by the Taliban. Ahmad Massoud's nephew, General Abdul Udud Zare, too was reportedly killed in Rokha district of Panjshir. He was involved in negotiations with the Taliban on the future of Afghanistan. Another of Massoud's nephews, Munib Amiri, was also reportedly killed in a gunfight. As the battle intensified, resistance forces chief Ahmad Massoud has been in Tajikistan for the last 3 days, while former Vice President Amrullah Saleh is still holding on in Panjshir at an undisclosed location and believed for now to be safe. His key aide told India Today that he has not abandoned his people. With Hikmatullah Ahmadzadi in Kabul, Bureau Report, India Today.
As the fight for Panjshir rages on, a direct link has emerged showing Pakistan's involvement in the developments in Afghanistan. Resistance leaders have pointed fingers at Islamabad being Taliban's puppet and aiding them with fighter jets. Interestingly, Pakistan is also on the guest list of Taliban for their new government coronation, joining a select few nations including China, Russia, Turkey, Iran and Qatar.
The process of the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan is nearing its end. The group claiming control over the last holdout region of Panjshir. The stunning sweep took only a few weeks, leaving several hows unanswered. But now as fighting wanes, actors behind the curtains during the Taliban offensive are beginning to show up, with their involvement becoming increasingly clear. The resistance front in Panjshir has exposed the role of Pakistan, with self-proclaimed Afghan President Amrullah Saleh's close aide confirming to India Today that Pakistan Air Force helicopters have been helping Taliban fighters by pounding Panjshir. Ahmad Massoud too has pointed the finger at Pakistan, saying that the world knew of Pakistan's involvement in bombing Panjshir but was silent.
نشان دادن که نه باوری به شریعت دارن، نه باوری نه به قرآن دارن و نه فیصله علمای سرتاسر افغانستان باورمند هستند. و بعد از فیصله علما اونا حملات گسترده خود برخلاف فیصله بالای ملت و مردم ما شروع کردن.
Afghanistan's Samangan province MP Zia Aryanjad made a similar claim, saying Panjshir was being bombed by Pakistan Air Force using drones. Iran has condemned Sunday night's attacks on Panjshir and called for investigations into reports of foreign interference and Pakistan's cooperation in the war. Pakistan also seems to be actively involved in government formation exercise in Afghanistan, sending its intelligence agency ISI chief Faiz Hameed to Kabul on the invitation of the Taliban Council. Pakistan's spy agency chief met the Afghanistan warlord Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who is also president of the Hezb-e-Islami party, and reportedly discussed forming a coalition government in the country. The ISI chief is also reportedly brokering peace between warring Taliban factions who are on a collision course with the Haqqani network over key portfolios of interior and defense. Interestingly, Pakistan is also on the guest list of the Taliban for their government unveiling program, joining a select few nations including China, Russia, Turkey, Iran and Qatar. Pakistan has also activated its forward airfield in Balochistan near the Afghan border, from where its fighters and other aircraft can take off and land. Sources tell India Today that a significant amount of air activity has been observed in the region, which is aimed at providing tactical support to the Taliban. Bureau Report, India Today.
How serious are the differences between the different factions of the Taliban? Will the ISI be able to play the role of mediator, bring these different factions together? What does the delay in government formation suggest about the future of this Taliban government? Remember, the new government in Afghanistan was to be sworn in last Friday, but because of these differences which kept simmering, the government still hasn't been sworn in, the process delayed at least till the coming Friday. Joining me on this broadcast, I want to welcome first Rakesh Sood. Rakesh Sood has been India's ambassador to Afghanistan from 2005 to 2008. Welcome back, sir. With us on this broadcast also is Bilal Sarwari. He is a well-known Afghan journalist, has worked with the BBC, has studied a lot about terrorism, drug, warfare in Afghanistan and elsewhere. We have former High Commissioner of Pakistan to India, Abdul Basit. He was Ambassador Basit was in India from 2014 to 2017. Sushant Sareen joins us, tracks strategic affairs very closely, as does Kabir Taneja, author of the book ISIS Peril, the world's most feared terror group and its shadow on South Asia. I want to go across first and foremost to Rakesh Sood on how serious you believe the differences between the different Taliban factions are, and what is this delay in government formation suggesting to you? There is no clear voice coming out which accepts that there are differences and that is what is leading to the delay, but that really seems to be the opinion that is emerging. How deep are these differences? What do these differences suggest about the kind of government the Taliban will be able to run? Ambassador Sood.
Well, Rahul, one thing is quite clear, that there are serious differences, because I think about 5 or 6 days ago, there were a set of names that had been floated about Defense Minister, Interior Minister. I remember it was Abdul Qayyum Zakir who was being named for one of the portfolios. Ibrahim Sadr was being named Mayor of Kabul, Governor of Kabul, Head of Intelligence, and so on. Today, we've seen a whole new set of names doing the rounds, and those names are not in mention. I mean, we've heard the name of Muhammad Hassan Akhund, who is part of the Quetta Shura, who's being perhaps named as, or being proposed as, the Rais-e-Jamhoor, which would be the head of state or something like that. He would have Mullah Brother as one of his deputies, and another deputy. He would have Sirajuddin Haqqani as the interior minister, and so on. So clearly, one is that you get different sets of names. You see the delays that are taking place. And the fact that Pakistan had to send the DG ISI to help in, from what we could see of the news clip when he reached and he said, "Don't worry, everything will be okay." I mean, very reassuringly, very smug and patronizingly. indicates that I think even the Pakistanis are a little concerned. They would have preferred if, I mean, instead of sending the head of ISI, I mean, it may have been more appropriate to send a political grouping, you know, maybe a lot of Pashtuns and other political people to as the first delegation to Afghanistan. But instead of that, who do we see? I mean, it's so if there is any evidence that is needed as to who calls the shots, I think.
So let me put that question then to the former High Commissioner of Pakistan in India, Abdul Basit, because when you were on our broadcast last, you denied the role of the ISI in the government formation and the machinations in Afghanistan. The fact that, like an imperial viceroy, the ISI chief arrives in Kabul, says, "Don't worry, boys, everything will be fine," just seems to bring out into public glare the role that the ISI so far has been playing in the shadows. Intelligence agencies usually prefer to operate in the shadows, but when they come out and literally accept their role in government formation, then the whole world says very loudly, Ambassador Basit, QED, we told you so.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you. Obviously, Ambassador Sood appears to be more well-informed than I am. You know, we have been playing a constructive role. So for us, there is nothing to really hide. If we are involved in Afghanistan, it is for a peaceful and stable Afghanistan. No more, no less. If our ISI chief is visited, so has the CIA director. So nothing unusual. As for the differences among the Taliban, I think I again do not find anything sui generis about it, because these things do happen, and Taliban have been through a very difficult phase. And if there are differences, I'm not privy to those differences, but if we go by what Ambassador Sood is saying, I mean, it is absolutely natural to have such differences, so I'm sure. And then it is also possible that the Taliban might have been waiting for the Panjshir Valley to come under their control. Now that is done. I'm hearing from my sources that the formation of the government would be announced on the 11th of September.
I want to welcome now to this broadcast from the Georgetown University in the United States, iconic academic, someone who is at this moment all across social media. C. Christine Fair, Security Studies program at Georgetown University. And this because she was on a show with the BBC where Philippa Thomas, who was the anchor, was accused of shutting down this American academic for her views on Pakistan, where she essentially spoke of the role that the ISI was playing in government formation. Christine Fair, welcome, ma'am, to this broadcast. What do you think General Faiz Hameed's public appearance in Kabul is suggesting about the kind of role that the ISI seems to be playing in government formation in Afghanistan at this time? We're hearing from the former High Commissioner of Pakistan to India, Abdul Basit, that this is just a very constructive role that the ISI seems to be playing. You've spent your life studying terrorism in Pakistan and the Pak Army. What's your sense, ma'am?
Yeah, so obviously, first of all, thank you for having me. It's been a really weird 24 hours. No, so I'm going to depart politely with Abdul Basit. I think the most important explanation of his appearance yesterday so brazenly is what we've actually been seeing in the Panjshir. His assurances that everything is going to be okay, I interpret that differently. There are reports all over Afghanistan that Pakistani aircraft have been hammering the Panjshir. So, and let's just pretend that those were the aircraft that were captured by the Americans. Is anyone going to actually argue that the Taliban know how to fly and operate those aircraft? Absolutely not. So I have a really different, and I have to say far more sinister read of him arriving in Kabul. We also know that there are fairly strong differences in opinion that have arisen across the Taliban's different shuras. And so the arrival of the leader of the most important shura, the Pindi Shura, was there to deliver many messages, but I think his most important role is to coordinate the erasure of people in the Panjshir who are resisting the Taliban.
Can I just for a moment draw you into what happened on the BBC, where you were on this broadcast talking about the role that the ISI and the Pakistani army were playing? You're calling this the Pindi Shura, and the anchor suddenly seemed to get very agitated. Those clips went viral all across India and in many parts of the world. And this is actually the first time we've had an opportunity to speak to you about that and what you think happened during that broadcast, where what was a well-researched academic point of view was shouted down.
So, I don't really go into conspiracy theories. I've been on her show before. I mean, I think she's a news reader, right? She's not a journalist. So I view her very differently from, say, Lisa Said, right? So, and the BBC does have this fairness doctrine. But, so she was patently ignorant, right? Many Pakistani officials have conceded exactly what I have said they have done on the BBC itself, right? President Musharraf has conceded that. Malia Lodhi, who is always an official, she also conceded this on BBC. So she just wasn't even aware of what her own network had broadcast. But I think even more problematically is that when they do, I guess there was a BBC spokesperson who says it's the practice to be combative or whatever. When you look at the different Pakistani officials that have appeared on the BBC, including Moeed Yusuf, they are never treated that way. They are never interrupted. You never hear someone saying something like, well, I'm sure the scholars that study Pakistan would disagree. So it was really weird. I don't have an agenda. My agenda are the facts. I've spent time working in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. My views on the Pakistan Army are informed by primary source documents produced by the Army itself. So when
But at this moment, the Pakistani establishment, we just heard from High Commissioner Basit, he denied the role of the Pakistani Army in the operations in Panjshir. He says, you've got the likes of Christine Fair saying what they are, but how do you prove that the fighter aircraft flying above the Panjshir mountains are being flown by Pakistani Air Force fighter jets, fighter pilots?
So I can tell you right now, the United States does have drones in theater. The United States knows exactly who is operating in that airspace. So I'm sorry, Mr. Bassett, I didn't hear you make this outrageous lie. So I'm going to, if you denied that there were Pakistani aircraft in Panjshir, shame on you. You are continuing a long and illustrious career of Pakistani seemingly affable politicians lying through your teeth. And I'm going to continue my long, illustrious career of calling you out on it.
Ambassador Basit, this charge that if there are Pakistani fighter jets, or if there are fighter jets above Panjshir, or if there are sophisticated drones that are being used, as the resistance alleged, that Dashti, who's the spokesperson of the resistance, was taken down in a Pak drone attack. If indeed there is a drone attack, surely the Taliban at this moment don't have the sophistication to be able to fly a drone, launch a missile and take down a target. That was done by a professional army, and the only army close by would be interested in taking down the likes of Dashti, sir, is the Pak army and the ISI.
First of all, I hope that Ms. Fair would use
the
proper language.
It's not Miss, it's Doctor. So address me nicely, and I'll play nice too. But it is Dr. Fair. Thank you very much.
Dr. Fair would use the proper language for a Pakistan ex-official, because I do not get into a slanging match here. Whatever I say, I'm saying in my personal capacity, and as my personal assessment. As far as my assessment is concerned, Pakistan, as I said, has been playing a positive role. I do not understand as to why, on the one hand, the entire world is appreciating Pakistan's role, but only India and a few Western academics or journalists do not see that what Pakistan has been doing in order to bring about stability to this war-weary country. Don't you feel any sympathy for the people of Afghanistan after so many years, now that they have a chance to consolidate the peace dividends? So let the people of Afghanistan, build on that, rather than once again trying to push the country towards the precipice, towards civil war. That is not what we want, because Pakistan has always been directly affected by the developments in the country.
Let Bilal Sarwari respond to the point that you're making.
We cannot remain oblivious to what is happening in Afghanistan. Obviously, we do have interest. We have a long border with Afghanistan. So Pakistan cannot cannot detach itself from Afghanistan. So whatever we are doing at present, rest assured, that is for the people of Afghanistan, because we do understand their pain, we do understand their quandary, and we want this state of affairs to come to an end.
Okay, Bilal Sarwari, many people putting out messages from the Panjshir Valley and from around Afghanistan said that these were Pak fighter jets, Pak drones which were used in the operations in Panjshir. We are hearing from the Pakistani government and from the former High Commissioner completely denying that, saying that Indians are saying it, some Afghans are saying it, some academic scholars like Christine Fair are saying it, but this isn't true, there is no evidence. Prove it to us.
Look, Pakistan's role is very well documented over the last 20 years, what Pakistan's role was in terms of its support for the Taliban leaders and commanders. But at the moment, the challenge for the Taliban themselves and for everyone else is to make sure that they can transition from fighting into governance, and we can have an inclusive government, a government that can represent everyone. What we do see from the Taliban is that not only they have not changed, they are more rigid, they are more hot-blooded, and they have already imposed restrictions in places like Kabul with, a curtain separating men and women. They have put restrictions on former presenters in radio, television, Afghanistan. Perhaps the situation is very, very difficult outside of Kabul. But I'd also like to think that the Taliban now are no more the shadow government. They control Afghanistan. We all know what happened, how the state institutions crumbled. So how can the Taliban keep Afghanistan functional?
But how deep are the fissures between the Haqqani network and the Baradar Doha faction? To what extent are they responsible for delaying government formation at this moment? Who do you think is stronger? Will they be able to come together before Friday, or will these fissures continue to simmer?
If I may just finish on that point, Afghanistan continues to remain shut to the neighborhood. There's no trade. People want services. As far as the Taliban are concerned, it is now abundantly clear that there are ideological differences between the Taliban leadership about how they want to move from here on, because I would like to divide the Taliban into three categories. The number one is the political leadership that is exposed to international community, to governments. They have been dealing with the Americans and everyone else at the highest echelons. You would remember that President Trump in his administration was speaking to Bala Biradar, who's the de facto Taliban leader. However, when you talk about the Taliban military commanders and leaders, the ones who are influenced by foreign fighters, by Al-Qaeda, they are the ones who have also lost family members to drone strikes, to night raids. They think differently. And then you've got the foot-level soldiers, thousands of them from rural Afghanistan who've just found themselves into cities like Kabul. So we will have to see how the Taliban can make that transition, because you have to remember, this is not the same Afghanistan, the one that the Taliban ruled. This is a politically and socially transformed Afghanistan. However, we continue to see the Taliban making promises that we will do this and we will do that, but actions are not, the same as the words. So words have to match the actions, and we will have to see how it works. As far as the visit of Pakistan's intelligence chief is concerned, no matter what the purpose may or may not have been, I think it clearly indicated who in Pakistan is in control. It's the military, it's not the civilian leadership. And Afghans have a very difficult relationship, just like Pakistanis would have with Afghans over the last 20 years. It's a relationship of deep mistrust. It's a relationship that is fraught in many challenges. One of them is that governments in Afghanistan over the last 20 years have maintained that Pakistan has undermined the new Afghanistan.
Okay.
How Pakistan also moves away into what former President Hamid Karzai and many others like Amullah Saleh have called a civilized relationship will be very crucial in how Afghanistan and its neighbors, both near neighbors and far neighbors, can come to terms and find a mutually beneficial relationship, I think will be crucial. That will also, I think, determine the future of countries, even Pakistan.
Sushant Sareen, the presence of the ISI chief in Kabul, him saying, don't worry, things will be okay. And yet, on the other hand, you've got the Pakistani establishment, the likes of the former High Commissioner of Pakistan, denying the role of the ISI in government formation. At this moment, from all that you know, which of the two factions, the Haqqani faction or the Doha-leaning Baradar faction, has the sway? Who will determine the direction in which this new government in Afghanistan goes?
Rahul, it's difficult to say which one is going to hold sway, but just a couple of things. Number one, I don't take anything which the Pakistanis say publicly seriously because, if he doesn't like the word lies, they are generally extremely economical with the truth. And very often it's not even the truth. Aside of that, look, whatever else the ISI chief might have been trying to do, as Dr. Fair says, that he was probably trying to, guide or carry out all these attacks which were going to take place, direct all of that, or it was government formation. All of it could have been done without his being in the public glare. So for me, the important thing is, why did he choose to stand in the middle of a bustling hotel lobby, get himself photographed, and strut around like he's the pro-consul of Afghanistan?
Why do you think he did it?
So I think they're basically trying to send some kind of a message both to the Western world as well as inside Pakistan that we are the guys who are going to call the shots. But from what one is learning is that he's not had some very good conversations insofar as government formation is concerned. And clearly, if...
who would the ISI chief want as the new head of state?
Yeah, so if the report which has come out today in the Pakistani press talking about this fellow Hassan Akhund, look, he is a very hardline guy. He was a guy who was the foreign minister and had to be kicked out at that point of time by Mullah Omar simply because he was seen as, being obstructive to whatever little outreach the Taliban were trying to do in Taliban 1.0. So he's an extreme hardline guy. And if his name is now floating around, that means that something is seriously broken. Because if you're going to get that kind of a fellow and the other names which have been mentioned in today's report, then these are all extremely hardline people, which means that there will be no compromise, which means that ideologically it will be very, very similar to Taliban 1.0. Even otherwise, I don't think there's going to be much change which is going to come about. So I think, are the Pakistanis leaning in that direction? Or are the Taliban telling the Pakistanis, you've helped us enough, but we will make our own choices? I don't know. Number two, what is the role which the Haqqanis are going to play? If you're going to be making Sirajuddin Haqqani the interior minister and giving him, charge of all the security, basically to kill as many people as he wants to under Pakistani tutelage, then you clearly have a problem with the international community. I don't think the world, even though Mr. Biden would like to turn his face away and pretend Afghanistan doesn't exist anymore, it's going to be possible for them. They tried it in Syria. They had to return within a few months because of the kind of things which started happening out there. I don't see how the civilized world can simply turn a blind eye.
So far accepted wisdom was that Habatullah Akhundzada, the spiritual leader, would be the moral compass or the guiding force, as it were, in whatever worldview the Taliban has. Question number one, as Sushant says, is he even alive? B, will Mullah Baradar indeed be the face of the government? Or are you also picking up signs which suggest that the fissures, the divisions in the different factions of the Taliban are far deeper and there's a lot happening beneath the surface which hasn't fully come out, but there could be a big twist in who ultimately gets to run Kabul.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. It is very difficult to track right now, like what is really happening inside. There are far too many names right now floating around in space, and there's no real clarity. It's changing on a 24-hour basis. But that also means there are clear fissures within the Taliban, and that also means that the Quetta Shura is trying to stamp a much more ardent authority on what the eventual outcome is going to be. But now, whether Hibatullah Akhundzada is alive or not, I think we don't know. I mean, there have been reports that the victory parade that took place in Kandahar was attended by Akhundzada, and the picture that was circulated about him from Kandahar a couple of weeks ago was actually a quite older picture, not a new picture. So we really don't know whether he's alive or not. And that has happened before with Mullah Omar also. We only knew that about his passing much later. So it's really difficult to say, but there clearly, there are concerns within the Taliban on what kind of role I think the Haqqanis are going to play, because the first name that came up in Kabul once the Taliban entered Kabul were the Haqqanis, and not really Mullah Baradar or anyone from the south, so to speak. The kind of attention that the Haqqanis got in the first couple of days was something I think the other parts of Taliban really wanted to squash, so that there is a more balanced outcome of what kind of governance is going to take place. Because you have to remember that most of the international partners that the Taliban is trying to reach out to have asked for a quote-unquote inclusive government. And if that doesn't come up in some shape or form, it's going to be a lot of trouble for the Taliban to construct a reach out to anyone. That includes China, Russia, and so on.
Dr. Christine Fair, what's your sense of the military capabilities of the political Doha faction versus the Haqqani network? Will they be, in your view, able to come together, or if it actually leads to a full frontal face-off, there could be a continuing civil war and strife in Afghanistan because there is no amicable settlement?
So I've sat here very quietly and I've listened to a lot of things with which I vehemently disagree. Mm-hmm. And since I can't see people speaking, I only see myself, and I see some name of the owner of the Zoom link. I can't tell you who said it. So I heard someone say that this was a chance for Afghans to live in stability, that this represents the Afghans, that Pakistan has an interest in stability. I really heard a lot of rubbish. I want to take that up first because it's just so deeply offensive. If Pakistan had really been interested in stability, it would not have been bankrolling the Haqqani network and the Taliban and waging an unrelenting war upon a fledgling government to prevent that very outcome that was espoused as desirable. The fact that people can even say that with a straight face is just stunning to me. Second, the idea that the Taliban are going to have an inclusive government is also risible. And I think I'm the only female on this panel. So far, I'm the only female voice that I've heard. To make that statement, blankly speaking, means that you don't think women matter, because the Taliban are not going to have an inclusive government unless you concede that women are not human beings. Prior to this Pakistani take of Afghanistan via their proxies, there were more women in Afghanistan's parliament than there are in the United States Congress. So let's just stop saying that they're going to have a representative government. If you're going to continue to use that verbiage, what you're essentially saying is that Afghan women don't matter. And it's just unacceptable. Now, going to the question that was posed of me about the differences amongst these different shuras, as I already said, that was why the head of the Pindi Shura came out. Pakistan has a lot vested in making sure that its puppets actually succeed this time.
Who do you think the Pindi Shura would like as the head of state in Afghanistan? Would they be willing to work with Mullah Baradar, who also has some international linkages, or will they want their man who's more of a hardline extremist in charge?
So actually, Pakistan, and I'm Sushant, Shreen, and we might differ on a lot of issues, but I think our assessment of the way Pakistan uses different factions to its benefit. I would also add to the mix the Islamic State Khorasan province. Islamic State, everyone has made hay of the Islamic State Khorasan province as being somehow inimical to the Taliban. That's kind of a naive analysis. It's basically you have these folks jettisoning in who are otherwise ISIL experts trying to make themselves relevant here. Most of the ISIS KP, or as I prefer to call them, ISI KP, they're Deobandis. They have been disgruntled Taliban. Many of them have come from Pakistan's Lashkar-e-Jhangvi and Sabah, and also from the TTP. So this is a much more indigenous off-pack organization than anything else. And what the ISI has very successfully done, despite Abdul Bassett's anticipated objections, is that it has to calibrate the Taliban, right? Because the Taliban are going to want to try to dissociate themselves from the ISI. And indeed, the ISI is not terribly well liked among many of the Talibs. So Pakistan actually exploits these fissions. It will prop up one faction to make one feel more weak. It will even use one faction to assassinate more disreputable actors. I mean, this was a play that we saw early on in Kashmir, if you'll recall, when JKLF was the only band they had to play. They tolerated them. But when Hizbul Mujahideen came online, Hizbul Mujahideen first began assassinating JKLF. And then when Lashkar-e-Taiba came online, Lashkar and Hizb began killing each other. So Pakistan has very much adopted this notion of divide and rule.
But can they pull this off, Ambassador Sood?
Oh, yes. Let me just tell you right now that they will pull it off, because they always do. I mean, you have to give it to Pakistan. There are very few countries that can routinely and for so long ride tigers and then somehow get off. You have to give credit where credit is due. The only way that the Pakistani state is going to experience any kind of blowback that matters is if we see what we saw in 2009, which is when the Pakistani Taliban began targeting the Punjab. Up until then, the Pakistanis are very much okay with taking hits on Pashtuns and Baloch for reasons that any sentient person knows.
Let me put that question to Ambassador Sood.
Yeah,
so far,
was one thing.
Pakistan has maneuvered.
Just give me 1 second.
Okay, go on.
Can I read a poem?
Go on.
I would like to read a poem, please. And this is for Ambassador Bassett. Sajan re jhoot mat bolo. Khuda ke paas jana hai. Na hati hai, na ghoda hai. Yahan pedal hi jana hai.
Wow, बहुत खूब. I am very impressed with your Urdu stroke Hindi. Ambassador Bassett, अब आपके पास उर्दू या हिंदी में जवाब है तो डॉक्टर फेयर का जवाब दें. वो तो कह रहे हैं खुदा के वास्ते झूठ ना बोलो.
What can I say, Dr. Fair? I mean, we have been hearing all these trite, allegations. Now, I mean, the time has come to be realistic and see the ground realities, what has happened. It is the West which has bring about misery to Afghanistan, I would say now in retrospect. Why the US entered into an agreement with the Taliban on the 29th of February last year. So it was the US, primarily speaking, which has, recognized, given legitimacy to the Taliban.
I thought आप उर्दू की कविता का जवाब कविता के साथ देंगे.
No,
शायरी का जवाब शायरी के साथ देंगे.
I can do that. But what to say now?
Irshad, let's see, Ambassador, you've been put on the spot by an American academic who's quoting an Urdu verse, throwing it at you, and now everyone's watching. Ambassador Irshad.
Bechara.
Abdul Basit Saab?
Gigi.
I'm saying, do you have a poetic response? Yeah, she's thrown a poetic barb at you, as would happen in a mehfil-e-mushaira.
No, she has, you know, kind of this comes from a Hindi song, if I remember this. So there is I can say that, you know, ke खुदा के वास्ते झूठी ना खाइए कस्में, खुदा के वास्ते झूठी ना खाइए कस्में, हमें यकीन हुआ हमको एतबार आया.
Kya baat hai? I mean, I don't necessarily agree with what Ambassador Basit is saying, but the fact that a discussion on Afghanistan is now turning into a mehfil with poetry being tossed around. I want to go across to Rakesh Sood, Sushant Sareen, Kabir Taneja. Do you have anything to add to this? Who has something to throw in? And any of you putting your hand up and wanting to jump in and respond to that? Rakesh Sood, in conclusion, can I ask you about whether you believe the ISI will be able to continue maneuvering the situation in Afghanistan in this fashion? Or do you believe that they've been riding this tiger and at some point they won't know how to disembark?
No, I think the ISI will be able to call the shots, and they will be able to, after all, what is the ISI's interest is primarily, as I think Bilal was explaining, there are different factions. Sushant was also mentioning that. So I have talked about it on your show earlier. The ISI is obviously most comfortable with the faction that they are closest to, namely the Quetta Shura and the Haqqani network. So, you know, the Doha crowd has been a little away. As you know, in the last couple of days, we've seen lots of reports about Sheikh Mohammed Abbas Tanikzai perhaps being nominated foreign minister. Today, his name is nowhere being mentioned. Mullah Brother, from being the executive head, president, prime minister, is now suddenly deputy to somebody from the Quetta Shura. I mean, whether these names stay or not, one doesn't know. But clearly the intention of the ISI would be to have people they can rely on. Also, let's not forget, I mean, Sirajuddin Haqqani still has a $10 million bounty on his head by the United States. It hasn't been taken off. And Khalilur Haqqani also has a $5 million bounty, the chap who's supposedly in charge of security in Kabul. I mean, who knows? I mean,
you know, what's very clear from all of what we are hearing is that the fissures in the Afghan Taliban are real, they are deep. The ISI at this moment trying to remote control the situation and bend it to its advantage. Can they continue to do so? Can they pull it off? But the whole idea that there would be an inclusive government in Afghanistan, that now seems to be under serious question. We've had some sharp insights, we've had some Hindi songs, we've had some Urdu poetry. So to Dr. Christine Faiz, Sushant Sareen, High Commissioner Basit, Ambassador Rakesh Sood, Bilal Sarwari, Kabir Taneja for joining me on the Newstrack. Thank you very much. We'll slip into a quick break. When we come back, there's no poetry, but there's more news. So stay with us. Back in a moment.